People leaving? That's less energy I have to pour out. Yeah, it's a good thing for me. Right. Okay, good morning. Look, just because there's like 5 people in here doesn't mean you can't talk. Good morning. Good morning. There you go. Okay, we'll pick up in 1 Thessalonians chapter 2. And just as a way of reminder, chapter 1, Paul is just ecstatic and about the movement of God among this group of people in Thessalonica. And Paul uses the opportunity to re-engage with them and to encourage them and to remind them of things and put things in front of their face as he continues to build towards addressing a few things. When we get into chapter 2, the first chapter seems, and really chapter 2 really is, we could continue on with this theme of celebration. Chapter 2, I think Paul starts kind of turning a little bit more into this affectionate, intimate approach that he had when he was there. This is all about relational leadership, relational care. Paul reminds them of just how different his approach was to them, different than what they would expect of a leader. And in doing so, it would build trust. Question: why might they need to hear all of this? Very practical way. Why might they need to hear all of this? Let's rewind. Paul makes it to Thessalonica and to that area, really, and begins to preach. He's at the synagogue teaching people. They're having these conversations. Many of the Greeks, men and women, believe and start following the way, and then some of the Jews as well. But then you had other Jews in the community who just got very envious of what was happening, and they stir up this controversy. We might say they stir up riots, and Paul and his entourage head out, and then they follow him essentially, and it becomes this big ordeal. And this church's community is just kind of left there, and Paul hasn't been able to connect with them, or there you go. And so he sends Timothy to find out what's going on. Timothy comes back with this great report, and then Paul writes this letter. Why might they need to hear from Paul? Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yes. Right. Yeah. Okay. Anybody else build on that? Mm-hmm. Okay. What kind of people were they used to coming through Thessalonica? Yeah. People like Paul, snake oil salesman type, right? These aren't people who are unfamiliar with traveling teachers, if you will, philosophers, people who are out for prestige and honor and coming through a place like Thessalonica, right? Remember in chapter 2, he goes through all of these things that he mentions would be ways by which people like Paul would be evaluated, whether or not they were the real deal, right? So the fact that Paul has not been able to be there with them for some time, what might begin to seep into their hearts about Paul, about all of this? Yeah, no different than anybody else, right? Right? No different than anybody else. There's no connection. He's just kind of separated. He's not, right? And so when you get back to chapter 1, he's this reminder of all the things they went through, right? He's bringing all this back up so they can follow this trail. And then in chapter 2, he's going to emphasize, right, why he hasn't been able to be there with them. And he does that for a reason. Okay? He does that for a reason. There's this tremendous display of affection that the Apostle Paul has for them. He reminds them of it, right? And it's in stark contrast to what they would expect from someone, from any leader. But Paul really is setting himself and his people, like his entourage, people who were with him, apart from other, said, traveling, whatever, salesmen that would come through. So it's just in reconnecting and re-engaging with people who he hasn't been able to connect with since all of this happened. It's helpful, right? So, hey, just if there's any of that seeping in, like, let's just get that out, right? Like, let's just remind us of what's happened and why we haven't been able to connect there. So let's pick up here, right? And I think it's super important here. There's a lot of stuff we could talk about, but I really think that Paul really reflects this servant-style relational leadership, tender, affectionate, but yet it's formative, right, and directional. Remember, he uses words like, we were like a mother to you. And then he goes, mothers do what? What are mothers are all about? Starts with an N. Nurturing, yeah. Saying no. Nurturing, right? My wife's the no person. I'm the yes man in the house. I mean, it's all girls, so what am I supposed to do? I'm sure there would be more no's if it was a boy. So, but mothers are nourishing, and then fathers, especially in this society, we're all about preparing you for social life, for the world. And so there's the formative, directional piece, okay? Let's just pick up here in verse 11. He says, as you know, we treated each one of you as a father treats his own children, exhorting, that's urging forward, and encouraging you, gentle influence with words, and insisting, so there's the charge, right? That you live in a way or walk worthy of God who calls you to his own kingdom, right? This is your shared allegiance. And you just lost my place. Oh, and his glory, right? All connected. Think about glory. I want you to think about glory, the word glory, the concept of glory in the Greco-Roman society context. What comes to your mind? What would come to their mind? Glory. Just take a wild guess. Okay? So power, right? Prestige. Set apart, above, really? All others, right? You're the best. Right? What would be one of the ways in which a person's glory, if you will, would be reflected in that society? Kind of trophy were people receiving? A crown? Crown, keep that in mind, okay? So glory, we're talking about destiny, okay? And so, verse 13. Now keep all that in mind, right? So now he's celebrating their response. And so we too constantly thank God that when you received God's message that you heard from us, you accepted it, not as a human message, which takes you all the way back to those qualities and those evaluations in the beginning of this chapter, in which people were evaluated on their integrity, whether what they were saying was true, whether they can trustworthy, okay? But he says, remember, you didn't receive it as a message from man. He said, but you received it. How? As it truly is. God's message, which is at work among you who believe. Okay, so he ties directly back to verse 3. Not of error, impurity, or deceit. He says our message was not manipulation. Okay, this is Adam's paraphrase. Our message was not manipulation. Okay, your reception was not gullibility. Okay, we didn't pull the wool over your eyes type thing. Okay, but God Himself was at work and is at work. Literally, when he says this, which is at work among you, which is not just past, it's current, right? It's the idea of God is active and shaping them, okay? And this explains what he says next, verse 14. For you became imitators, brothers and sisters, of God's church in Christ Jesus that are in Judea, because you too suffered the same things from your own countrymen as they in fact did from the Jews. So Paul is connecting what they're going through to what? What's he saying here? We're in 1 Thessalonians 2:14. What's he saying here? You became imitators, brothers and sisters, of God's churches in Christ Jesus that are in where? Judea. In other words, other places are dealing with the same thing. You're not alone. You're not isolated, right? He connects them to the larger family. That's important, right? This is not isolation. It's in solidarity, right? What they are experiencing is not shameful because something wrong has happened. And it's not just them, right? In fact, they are a part of something much bigger, okay? But he's referring to the situation that kind of started all of this to some degree, right? What are we talking about here? Look at verse 15. The situation in Judea that led to, right, those who killed both the Lord Jesus and the prophets and persecuted us severely. Paul says they are displeasing to God and are opposed to all people because they hinder us from speaking to the Gentiles so that they may be saved. What does this point back to? Okay. Yep. And specifically where? What instance? Acts 17. What's the situation? Is it 17? Is it 17? Yeah. Acts 17, the situation that even led to their separation. What happened? Paul gets to Thessalonica. What happens? He's teaching. There are some who are all about it, and then there are some who aren't. Who are they? Points back to the cause of the conflict right here. Okay? Why they end up in this situation at all. Why they're separated. The oppression, the persecution that they are enduring, right? What started that? In a very literal way, what started that? The Jews in Thessalonica who were envious of those Gentiles who were entering into whatever it was that Paul was doing. Okay, that's what he's talking about here, right? Like, he's reminding them of how all this got stirred up. Does that make sense? No? Yes? Maybe? Okay. Thus, he says, they constantly, now Paul is on a rampage now, right? He's kind of, I don't want to say he's spiraling, but he's getting ramped up here. And he's showing his, I say he's showing his Jewishness, okay? They thus constantly fill up their measure of sins, but wrath has come upon them completely. This is, go read the Jewish scriptures, go read the Old Testament. This is apocalyptic language, okay? There's hyperlinks all over this, the Old Testament. There is this, in the Old Testament, when there is a persistent opposition against what God is doing, what's the result? There's always consequences. All right? There's always consequences. And he seems to see the consequences unfolding already. Don't quite know exactly what he's thinking of, okay? What he's thinking of when he says this, but he's seeing the consequences unfolding as we speak, or as he's writing this letter. Paul? Yeah. Okay. Then he says in verse 17, in light of all of this, okay, it's like he kind of comes back. Right? It's like going off on a tangent and coming back. But when we were separated, some translations say torn away. It's a word that means orphaned. Think about that. Okay? When we were orphaned, when we were torn away. Why would he use that word? Why would he use that word? What does that reflect? Man. Right? It wasn't just, oh, see you later. It was, no. Didn't want to go. I didn't want this to happen. We're torn away from one another. Okay? What does that paint? What does that say about Paul? What does that say? Okay. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. And it evokes all sorts of, it can, I think, it evokes all sorts of feelings, emotions even. Would it not? Maybe? I think so. Right? It's like, think about grasping a hold of someone and then being forced away. Okay? It could be a very graphic picture of, it's like this violent act that stirs up these very deeply, like all the reasons why you didn't want to let go. Do you see that? Think of orphaned. Okay. So, let's just get into it here. When we were separated from you, brothers and sisters, I think at the very least, if you see nothing else, please see this deep affection. Okay? He did not want to be separated from them, and they need to know that. They need to know that he didn't just come through, say some things, and then leave. Okay? But we were separated from you, brothers and sisters, for a short time. In presence, he says, yes, but not, what's the next word? In spirit. Anybody else have a different translation? Heart. Anybody else? We were separated in presence, yes, but not in affection. That goes back to this word, separated, orphaned. Okay? You guys see that? Okay. So, we were separated from you, brothers and sisters, for a short time, in presence, not in affection, literally in face, not in heart. That's the picture. Okay? We became all the more fervent in our great desire to see you in person. Listen, allow yourself to feel the ache being expressed here. Do you see it? Do you see it? Right? Isn't it? Right? Yes. Allow yourself to feel the ache that's being expressed here. Okay? Mm-hmm. Now you're picking up. Okay. Yeah. Right? There is, I think, a very graphic depiction here, okay, of this relationship, okay? And it's very intimate, very affectionately driven. Just allow yourself to feel his ache, okay? He says separated. It doesn't have to do with distance, right? Look at what he says. Paul is saying it feels like a relational rupture here. You ever been separated from someone? Military? Anybody military? Yeah, where you had to, right? Know what that's like? Right? You don't want to do that. My sister-in-law is going through that right now. My brother-in-law is about to head out. Right? No one wants to go through that. It's such a disruption. Right? Okay. And again, tying back to, Ken just mentioned it here. Go back to, he's already used this imagery, right, of being like a mother and a father, right? And then he uses this word, this picture of being separated, torn apart. It's like the family has been separated, right? Almost like a paternal loss in a sense, okay? Paul emphasized, though, the separation is not what? It is physical, but not, some of your translations say spirit, heart. I would say, my paraphrase would be, it's not emotional, right? There's something deeper that ties us together here. But the longing is intense, and there's even this sense of urgency. Do you hear that? Do you hear that? I'm just trying to press upon you to read into this more than just the words. Like, put yourself there. Right? Feel what he's feeling and what he's trying to express, and maybe how they would receive it. Okay, and how it would be helpful, how it would be beneficial to them. Right? It's emotional vulnerability here. You see that? Today we would say this is attachment language. By the way, we would say, "Oh, it's attachment language," right? So it's emotional vulnerability. And this says something about the Apostle Paul and his approach to them, his leadership, what he did, right? Their relationship. And I think, man, we can learn so much from this. Okay. He says, for we want it, verse 18, to come to any questions or comments about any of that before we move on. For we wanted to come to you, he says, Paul, in fact, tried again and again, but Satan, adversary, the opposer, okay, thwarted us. Why is this important? Why would he bring this up? Why would he mention this again? What's the point? He repeats himself a lot. We would get annoyed by that today, wouldn't we? What's he saying? There's reasons why we were separated. It wasn't by choice. Okay? It wasn't by choice. And you really, really, really have to try your best to understand the position of those in Thessalonica. And with the outside pressure can cause internal cracks, right? Which is why we, even though in the face of knowing truth, reality, experience, and on a good day would have no reason to doubt, why even in the face of that, it would be really easy to just sometimes turn that away or turn that off or not even, or make a decision not in light of that, like as if that doesn't even exist. How?
When there's a lot of pressure, a lot of opposition within the faith community, a couple of things can happen.
So keep this in light of everything he said so far, right? There is this he's openly articulating affection. He's not leaving anything up to assumptions. If he did, what might they assume? Paul just said some of it. Start turning on each other based on assumptions, right? This is why, I can get on a soapbox right now, but I won't. Don't leave anything up to assumptions. We have to express it. There's I can feel my sorry. There's way too many assumptions. We leave things up to assumptions too often, okay? And we don't articulate what needs to be stated, but Paul does that. He's openly articulating his affection for them. He doesn't want any of this left up to assumptions, because if it's left up to assumptions, then what happens? With every assumption comes what? When you assume something, that gives birth to an expectation. And if your assumption is wrong, right, that expectation isn't met, what's the response or the reaction? Most oftentimes, what's the reaction? On a good day, a little disappointment. On a bad day, okay. I don't have to say it. Okay. So see what he's doing here. Okay, I think this is super important, right? And the other part of this is that their relationship is not transactional. Think about it. Their relationship is not transactional, right? He's saying, listen, I want you to just try to get inside their minds and wonder, okay, what might they think? That he didn't come back, that he's not coming back, right? What might they think? Who knows? Maybe they're thinking, oh, well, we have to do certain things before he returns. Maybe they're treating him like a patron, treating him like anybody else. It's tit for tat. He did this started, what do we do now? What do we do? What's that? Well, we've done all these things. Maybe someone will be thinking, look how faithful we are being. Look how we're holding together. And where is he? Okay, who knows? I don't know. I'm conjecturing here.
Or maybe he's just like these other wandering preachers
Yes. Yeah. Right. So think about it. Okay? It's like, I didn't make this choice. I want to be there with you. We want to be there with you. So whatever it is that's coming up, right? Whatever it is that's going on, whatever it is that's surfacing for you, okay? That's not what's happening here. That's not us, okay? And he interprets the obstacles as spiritual opposition. So as Paul was mentioning, he brings it up to another level, okay? Helps them understand there's a much bigger thing that's happening. And I think you have to connect that back to the moment where he begins to connect what they're going through with how other communities are going through the same thing. Right? There's a much bigger picture at play here, okay? Why might this emotional vulnerability be important? Why might this be important? We've answered it already. I'm just trying to make sure we get what's going on here. That's all.
quite correct what John said about the parenthetics, the wandering teachers who get a chance to collect money, talk money, and then they leave.
Yeah.
There's a wonderful emphasis that you were about what Paul was saying about this relationship.
Yeah.
They're being vulnerable is just a fact of
Yeah. So maybe, right? The Apostle Paul is expressing all of this. Again, my paraphrase. From their perspective, where have you been? Where have you been? Right? It's not that complicated. It's where have you been? Like, what's going on here? Right? Where have you been? And even maybe, you're just like every other wandering teacher that comes through here. Okay, but then, so I think this emotional vulnerability is important, and I think that's a part of all of this. Okay, but then, I love this. Look at verse 19. He says, so let's go back to verse 18. For we wanted to come to you, I, Paul, in fact, tried again and again, but Satan thwarted us. So in light of we wanted to, okay, we wanted to. And then he says in verse 19, it's almost like saying, why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't we want to come? For who is our hope or joy or crown to boast of before our Lord Jesus at his coming? Is it not, of course, you? It's like a massive crescendo, right? You? For you are our glory and joy. A couple things here. He uses these words, hope and joy and crown, boasting. How might they connect that in their world? Remember, the Apostle Paul is customary to using the same language but turning it upside down, or helping them understand the other side, or in a different way. So in the Greco-Roman world, leaders sought crowns of honor, right? Public recognition defined a person's worth. Their identity was wrapped up in all of this, right? Patrons would boast about and want you to boast about what? Them, right? What they've done, right? Their achievements. Okay? Are you catching it?
He's using these terms, which is just the opposite of how they were, the language is very violent
Mm-hmm.
and simple in act. They couldn't find Paul, so they drug out Jason,
Right.
took him before the magistrates, slandered them, took their words and twisted
Mm-hmm.
them so that the law would look at them as criminals. I mean, on
Yeah.
and on. You said it. I just love it. He flipped the entire situation on its head because what we see and how we feel is not necessarily the reality of
Yeah.
God.
Yeah. So literally, right? For instance, he used the word crowns. Would that have made any sort of connection to them at all? We said the answer earlier. Maybe you remember. Crowns. Crown. Why would he mention crowns? Would that resonate with them at all? Okay. Yeah. Literal crowns, right? In the form of what? Laurel wreaths, right? Think about that, okay? Given, who would get those? Athletes, I don't know, watch the Olympics. Athletes, right? Why? They win. It's a victory. They're on top, okay? So athletic victories, civic achievements, right? Public recognition, okay? There's a crown involved, okay? And that crown would do what? Everybody would see that, and what would they say? What would they think? How would they react to that? Come on, right? Look at that. Look at that, right? They're on top. They won. Oh, how blessed it must be them, right? They are among the chosen now, right? They were gifted with such that has allowed them to be, okay? It's a matter of perspective. All right, so Paul is transitioning, though, this honor and this prestige that they were accustomed to seeing and how it was given. Okay, he's taking all of that and he's transitioning it from like this public prestige to this relational fruitfulness, turning it upside down. Okay, like in other words, this is where it's at, right here, okay? My honor, my crown, he says, is not. Let's think back through the whole chapter. Let's think back. Who's he in contrast to? Who is the Apostle Paul? He has painted himself in contrast to who? Other people who come in just like him.
A little off the subject. Just talking about truth
Mm-hmm.
and lies. Come across an interesting quotation. Saying that truth does not mind being questioned. A lie does not like to be challenged. A lot of that going on.
Yeah. Yeah. So he says, like, my crown, my prestige, my honor is not in rhetorical skill. Remember? It's philosophers who come through, the speech they would use. Remember the values that people were judged by according to the criteria, right, that he uses? He says, my honor, my crown is not rhetorical skill, okay? It's not status. It's not numbers. It's not wealth, okay? It's who? You guys. It's people. It's you, right? It's you, and it's before who? The Lord, okay? In the presence of the Lord. So it's people. It's like their faithfulness, their transformation, their perseverance. It's all the things he's talked about up to this point, right? That's what he finds as value. That's where he finds his honor, right? Like, and he needs them to understand that. Now, what would that do for them? How would that be helpful for them to understand this? He's reframing what's worth celebrating. What's worth celebrating? Starts with an R. I'm not telling you the answer. What's worth celebrating? What's all this? Go ahead. Come on, somebody's listening. Relationship. That's what this has been that's what all this has been about. It's relationship. Over and over and over again. We get so lost in the little things that he talks about, and those are great. It's great to sit here and talk about what it would look like to boast in the Lord, and all these little, it's good stuff, good stuff. But you got to take a step back, okay? Because that's not what the Apostle Paul is doing, and that's not what they would have read from this. What they would have received from this was not all these, rabbit trails that we can go off and talk, which are great. I love doing that. But he's talking about relationship here, okay? Like, go back and read, beginning in chapter 1, go all the way through. He's still talking about the same thing, but he's turned, and he's not, because he's talking about, this is, wow, look at you guys, and God's working in your life, like, what's happening here? He's celebrating all of that. And then he's still celebrating, but he's turning in the process of helping them understand how important that his relation or their relationship is. Okay? He wants them to see that. And in order to do that, he has to help them see how he is not like all the other people who might come through. And why would they even think that he was like all the other people who come through? Because they were separated. Because they couldn't connect. They couldn't be together. And for some time, right? And now in reestablishing a connection with him, part of this is helping to strengthen, okay? Remind, maybe even do some repair. Who knows what's going on inside the hearts of people, right? But repairing maybe, but strengthening that bond, okay? Helping them see how, no, listen, the Lord's at work here. There's something much bigger happening here. And this is not you. It's not because of you. It's not because you've done anything wrong, right? You're not the only ones going through this. This is a widespread thing, okay? I said, but man, I love you guys, right? Like, it's all about relationship, okay? Powell.
He's taking it back to the basis of who Jesus is as the resurrected Lord. Who wants to be separated from their fellow man? Who wants to be separated from what they're written? They are the winner's crown.
Yeah.
And later on in 2 Timothy, he'll say, the Lord, the righteous judge, will award
Yeah. So in the process of explaining that, right? It's expressing like how he feels about them, this affection. You guys see that? Maybe? Just a little bit? Yeah. Okay? Like, so, I mean, think about it. We could ask some questions here. What does Paul's metaphors, like children, mother, father, think about that language. He's a very intentional guy, right? What does that teach us? What is he expressing? And then what does that teach us about leadership and about community? I mean, what is sharing not only the gospel but our lives? What is he trying to get across here? And what does that help us understand and see? Go ahead. Yeah. Yeah. Not hierarchical. Is that a word? Is that right? Okay. Yeah. Exactly. Right. What would that communicate? Like, it all comes back to relational. It all comes back to that, right? It's like people over what? Okay. Anybody else?
You mentioned how Paul chooses his words carefully. And while that being the case, his letters represent more than nearly any other language, passion and a boiling over. And so when he says something, he's got a lot of emotional impact.
Yeah.
He says a lot of relational impact behind that. And you can almost read beneath the papyrus there, I mean what I say.
Yeah. He's like he's doing his, like, I'm sure you've all been, trying to help someone see something, and man, you just put everything you got into it, and you're just trying to somehow, like, metaphysically infuse the thing inside of them, but you can't. You just really want them to get it. Anybody? I mean, like, come on. It's like that. That's what you hear, right, in his words. And so, again, big picture here, right? They were so fueled and sustained by God's action in their lives, okay, especially in the beginning. And this is what Paul is expressing in chapter 1, right? He sees this and he celebrates it, and he celebrates their reactions to it all. And then you get to chapter 2, he helps to strengthen their faith, their trust in the message they received, right? In himself and in their relationships. It's like, this is not like other things, okay? He would pass any of the evaluations with flying colors, right? There's no accusation could stick. And he says, we ate for you. We ate to be with you once again. And then we turn to chapter 3. So maybe you want to read chapter 3 this week if you get a chance, okay? Because he's going to show what this kind of community does under pressure, okay? He's going to show what this kind of community does under pressure, chapter 3. And it's, community that's established in love, and it's on display.